How's it going? I start my show usually by saying, "This is only a game. I'm Bill Littlefield." And when my kids were younger, they used to always hope that I would start it by saying, "Thank you, Amy."
Can you move it up a little?
Yes, I can do that.
There we go.
Joke's gone, though. It's live radio. Anyway, they always used to hope that I would start out by saying, "This is Bill Littlefield, and I'm only a game." And I never did. People ask sometimes where we get the ideas for our stories for Only Game and where I get ideas for the commentaries that I do. And sometimes the producers find them. They're always looking for promising stories. And sometimes listeners will send in suggestions. You get somebody who call in and say, "Hey, you got to interview my kid. He's going to play for the Red Sox. And any day that's good for you is okay for me. I'll take him out of a second grade classroom." And sometimes I'll see something in the news and I'll say, well, this, there might be something here, might be a story here, we'll see. And that's how I came across Zippy Chippy. I saw an article, little squib in the paper. It said Zippy Chippy had run in 38 races without winning. And that seemed odd. Zippy is a racehorse, and he was supposed to be a fast horse. His bloodline suggested that he was a fast horse, but he wasn't. And the reason I say it was odd is because usually when a horse runs in a bunch of races and doesn't win any money, the trainer and the owner give up, and that's that, because the horse has to eat even if he doesn't win, and they're very expensive to feed and to board. But then I see another, it said, Zippy's now run 42 races without winning. And so we started to cover Zippy. And we covered Zippy just by updating his career. So every few weeks we'd say, by the way, Chippy's running 56 races, still hasn't won. 64 races. 71 races, Zippy still hasn't won, anything. And people started, and if we went like more than a couple of weeks without updating, people would call in and they'd say, "How's Zippy doing?" And the answer was always the same. And eventually, Zippy ran in 100 races, and he never won, which is really exceptional. And then and then we lost track of him. And of course, I feared the worst. I thought Zippy is laboring for short oats somewhere in Mexico, or he's dog food and glue, because that's what happens to horses that don't ever win, and Zippy never did. So I kind of, all right, we kind of lost track of him, and I moved on. I found other stories to tell. And then about 5 years ago, we came up on the 20th anniversary of Only a Game, and we had this idea that it would be fun to revisit stories that we had done over the years and see, re-update people. Where are they now kind of stories. And I said, well, then we got to see if Zippy is still alive. And I did a little research, and I found out that Zippy was, in fact, still alive. And he was living in a sort of equine retirement home in Saratoga Springs, quite close to the racetrack at Saratoga. I would say a quick sprint from the racetrack, except not an appropriate term for Zippy. But he was there, and so I said, okay, well, I got to go visit with Zippy. I'm going to update the Zippy Chippy story by going up to Saratoga. That's him. And I really lucked out, because on the day that I went to visit Zippy, it was awful. It was wet, raining, muddy, just as bad as it could be, which was great because there was nobody else there. And so I got to sit in the barn with that lady whose name is Joanne Pepper. And I sat there for a couple hours with Joanne and the other women who were running this place, just hearing their stories, just listening to them. And turned out Zippy had a stable mate, and they were inseparable, and he was having a great life. And so as part of what I was trying to do to do the story, I asked Joanne to just sort of recap for me the story of the end of Zippy's racing career, and she was good enough to do that.
He stopped leaving the starting gate when it opened at Finger Lakes 3 times in a row, and then you get kicked off the grounds.
So he was kind of the Ferdinand the Bull of thoroughbred horse racing. He would rather smell the flowers than participate in the competition.
I think so, yes. Or he just enjoyed, being gracious and letting everybody else go ahead.
So the great thing about retirement was that in retirement, of course, Zippy didn't have to run. And according to Joanne, retirement suited him very, very well. And he had adjusted quite well to a life of leisure.
He has. I think Zippy's as happy as he can be. He looks great. He's 22 years old. He's healthy. He gets a lot of carrots, so he's well fed. And I think he's happy. He is quite famous. He has quite a lot of fans. And actually, every day he's getting new fans. When they hear his story, people just think he's adorable.
So, of course, I was relieved. And when the rain stopped, I visited Zippy in the corral. Joanne gave me a carrot to feed Zippy, and when he saw me coming, he ran to the fence. And you know what I'm going to say next, right? It's probably faster than he'd ever run before. And Joanne, who has a terrific sense of how radio works and what you really need to make a radio story work, Joanne asked Zippy if he'd like to participate in the story.
And be on the radio?
Isn't that inspiring? I thought so, and so I undertook to immortalize the experience. See, now, you saw Jack's show before, so you knew he'd be back. There's no ham like a circus ham. That's all right. So my only way of immortalizing Zippy or anything else is to write a doggerel about it. And I actually recently, I got a very angry email from a poet. And I know he was a poet because he signed the email, and I Googled him. And it said right on the page that he was a poet. And he was really angry, and he said, I like your attitude and I like your political views, but you got to stop calling yourself a poet. And I said, I never have called myself a poet. And in fact, I correct the people who call me a poet. As I don't write poetry, I write doggerel. And as he could have told you, that's the antithesis of poetry. But it's the best I could do for Zippy. So, Zippy Chippy wasn't Zippy, for despite his name, he tended not to run a lot. Although he wasn't lame, 100 times he entered races, never did he win. And sometimes Zippy just stood still, not choosing to begin. The call would be, "They're off," but Zippy wasn't off at all. He'd look around as if to say, "Let's go back to the stall." Why, when other horses ran, would Zippy choose to be the only one unmoved by dreams of mighty victory? Some said that Zippy had no heart, and some said he was nuts. One theory had it that he was a fumble-footed klutz. But what if Zippy Chippy had a bigger brain than most? And what if he knew winning was an empty sort of boast, if all the winning did was help some wealthy guy make money? And what if Zippy found that idea sort of sad and funny? And what if Zippy thought, they're going to feed me anyway? Why work as if without the work I wouldn't get the hay? Zippy Chippy lives today upon a lovely farm, and there he doesn't do a single living creature harm. The people come to visit him, and some of them conclude that Zippy Chippy is a joke. And I would find that rude if I could not imagine somehow Zippy's worked it out. Perhaps he chose to beat the game, then beat it in a rout. He did not suffer injuries. He didn't suffer fools. He got himself tossed off the track because of racing's rules, which say a horse that doesn't try cannot participate. If Zippy figured that one out, I think it would be great. For Zippy need not run these days, and still he gets to eat. He lacks for neither food nor love. He is a horse complete.
I got the horse right here, the name is Paul Revere, and here's the guy that says if the weather's clear, can do. This guy says the horse can do.